The massive council chamber stretched high above Ambassador Hyunwoo as he walked toward the center platform. His footsteps echoed in the vast space filled with alien beings from across the galaxy. The Veltrax sat on one side, their crystal bodies, catching the light and throwing rainbow patterns on the walls. Their faces looked like carved diamonds with sharp angles everywhere. The Morgans filled another section, their thick fur covering massive bodies that could crush a human without trying. Above them all, the ethereals floated in the air, their ghostly forms shifting between solid and transparent. Hyunwoo carried a small device containing everything humanity wanted to share with the galaxy. Inside were recordings of human weapons, human soldiers, and human culture. He hoped these powerful alien races would see that Earth deserved a place in the Galactic Defense Alliance. The Shadow Fleet was coming closer to human space every day. Those mechanical monsters had already destroyed 6 star systems and showed no signs of stopping. The Veltrax Chancellor rose from his crystal throne. His voice sounded like breaking glass when he spoke. "Welcome, human from the small planet called Earth. We have agreed to hear your request to join our alliance, though we cannot imagine what your primitive species might offer us." Hyunwoo activated his device and holographic displays filled the air around him. First came images of human military forces, soldiers in combat gear, tanks rolling across battlefields, jets screaming through the sky, and missiles launching toward distant targets. He explained how humans had fought countless wars and learned to work together despite their differences. The alien audience watched in silence, but Hyunwoo could see amusement in their strange faces. When the military presentation ended the Morgan War, Chief let out a deep rumbling laugh that shook the chamber floor. "Your warriors carry simple metal weapons," the Morgan said between laughs. "They have no natural claws, no armor grown from their own bodies, no enhanced senses to track enemies in the dark. How do they expect to fight the Shadow Fleet when they cannot even see in complete darkness?" The ethereal prime speaker drifted lower, his voice echoing inside everyone's minds. "These humans rely on crude machines to do what we accomplish with our natural abilities. Their flying vehicles burn chemical fuel while we travel through space, using pure thought energy. Their weapons throw small pieces of metal while our weapons reshape reality itself." But Hyunwoo was not finished. He activated the cultural section of his presentation, hoping to show that humans offered more than just weapons. The chamber filled with the sound of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. The powerful opening notes rang through the space, followed by the complex melodies that had moved human hearts for centuries. The reaction was immediate and devastating. Every alien in the chamber began making sounds of amusement. The Veltrax clinked their crystal bodies together, creating a sound like breaking dishes. The Morgans howled with laughter, their deep voices drowning out the beautiful music. The ethereals hummed in their harmonic language, but it sounded mocking, rather than appreciative. "What is this noise?" the Veltrax Chancellor demanded, waving his sharp crystal hand. "The sounds have no pattern, no mathematical precision. How can you call this organized communication? It is nothing but chaos." Next, Hyunwoo played traditional Korean drums, hoping the rhythmic patterns would make more sense to the aliens. The deep booming sounds filled the chamber, but only brought more laughter from the assembled beings. The Morgan war chief stood up, his massive form casting shadows across the platform. "Primitive rhythm banging," he declared. "This proves humans waste their mental capacity on meaningless activities. Instead of developing useful abilities like psychic powers or energy manipulation, they create random noise and call it important." The ethereal prime speaker floated directly above Hyunwoo, his ghostly form pulsing with what looked like amusement. Most curious of all is how these humans seem proud of this noise-making. They actually believe these sound patterns have some kind of meaning or value. In all our travels across the galaxy, we have never encountered a species so focused on such pointless activities. As more musical selections played, the mockery grew louder. Jazz, saxophone solos were called. Screeching metal sounds, rock guitar riffs were dismissed as mechanical grinding noises. Even gentle folk songs were labeled as primitive emotional expressions that showed humanity's inability to communicate properly. The chamber erupted in alien laughter when a recording of human opera began. The soprano's powerful voice, trying to convey deep emotion through song, only seemed to amuse the Galactic Council more. The high notes that humans found beautiful sounded like distress calls to the assembled aliens. Your species is clearly too primitive for our alliance. The Veltrac Chancellor announced, standing to his full imposing height. You have weak bodies, crude weapons, and you waste mental energy on meaningless sound creation. The Shadow Fleet would destroy you in moments. Your application is rejected. Yunwu felt his heart sink as he watched the alien representatives begin to leave their seats. The Morgan war chief paused only to add another insult. Perhaps when your species evolves, beyond making noise, you might be worthy of our attention. Until then, focus on developing real abilities. The ethereal prime speaker offered the final blow, drifting toward the chamber exit. These humans demonstrate why primitive species should remain isolated. Their obsession with chaos sounds would only distract our forces from proper battle preparation. The Shadow Fleet requires logical strategic thinking, not emotional noise pollution, as the great chamber emptied. Hyunwoo stood alone on the platform, his device still playing gentle human melodies to an audience that no longer cared. The most advanced civilizations in the galaxy had heard humanity's greatest cultural achievements and found them worthless, random noise they had called it, meaningless sound patterns that proved human mental weakness. The rejection burned in his chest as he made his way back to the human diplomatic ship. Earth would face the Shadow Fleet alone without allies or support. The species that had created music capable of bringing tears to human eyes had been dismissed as too primitive to deserve protection. Their greatest cultural treasures had become proof of their unworthiness. But as his ship departed the council station, Hyunwoo did not know that human music contained something the galaxy had never encountered, something that would soon prove far more powerful than any weapon the advanced alien civilizations possessed. The very chaos and unpredictability they had mocked would become the key to survival when the Shadow Fleet arrived. The aliens had laughed at human music today. Tomorrow they would beg for it. 3 months had passed since the humiliating rejection at the Galactic Council, and the situation had grown much worse. The Shadow Fleet had consumed 2 more star systems, including the advanced Kepler colonies, where 5 million beings had lived. The mechanical invaders moved through space like a plague, turning entire worlds into lifeless metal, and moving on to find new targets. Captain Ginny worked in her laboratory on Earth 18 hours every day, trying to find some weakness in the enemy. The Xenological Research Division had become the most important place on the planet, as humanity desperately searched for answers. Her team of scientists studied every piece of information they could gather about the Shadow Fleet, but progress was slow. The mechanical beings seemed perfect killing machines. Their ships could repair themselves, their weapons adapted to any defense, and their strategy changed based on whatever resistance they encountered. Most terrifying of all, they felt no fear, no pain, and no mercy. Every galactic military force that had tried to stop them had been completely destroyed. Dr. Taman looked up from his computer screens with exhausted eyes. Another battle report just came in from the Andromedas system. He told Jin'e. The Ethereals used their strongest psychic weapons against a small Shadow Fleet group. The machines adapted in less than 10 minutes and destroyed the entire Ethereal battle fleet. Jin'e nodded grimly as she studied the energy readings from recent battles. Something about the Shadow Fleet bothered her, but she could not identify exactly what it was. The mechanical beings communicated with each other using pure mathematical codes. They moved in perfect formations, and their attacks followed logical patterns based on maximum efficiency. Researcher So Young had been monitoring Shadow Fleet transmissions for weeks, trying to understand their communication methods. The strange thing is their pauses, she reported to the team. Every time they encounter something unexpected, they stop transmitting for exactly 4.7 seconds. It happens every single time, like they need that amount of time to process new information. That was when Jin'e noticed the pattern. She had been studying the pause intervals in dozens of battles and realized something important. The Shadow Fleet never paused when facing conventional weapons or standard military tactics. Those they could process instantly, but whenever they encountered something illogical or unpredictable, the pause always occurred. During one battle recording, Jin'e heard something that made her stop the playback. A human cargo ship had been caught in the fighting, and its communication system was broadcasting music while the crew tried to escape. The Shadow Fleet had paused for exactly 4.7 seconds when the music began playing before continuing their attack. Could it be that simple? Jine wondered aloud to her team. She began comparing Shadow Fleet communication patterns with human music databases. The mechanical beings used pure mathematical sequences to talk to each other. Every message followed perfect logical patterns that could be calculated and predicted. Human music was completely different. It combined mathematical elements like rhythm and melody with emotional expression that defied logical analysis. A single song might follow musical rules for several measures, then suddenly break those rules with unexpected changes. Composers added elements that felt right rather than calculated right. Working through the night, Jine's team made an incredible discovery. The Shadow Fleet's programming allowed them to instantly process any pattern based on logic or mathematics they could understand, and counter scientific principles, weapon technologies, and structured communications. But human music created patterns that were organized enough to be meaningful, yet chaotic enough to be unpredictable. The breakthrough came when Dr. Taemin played a recording of jazz improvisation. The saxophone player had started with a recognizable melody, then wandered into unexpected musical territory, creating sounds that even other humans could not predict. The mathematical analysis showed that while the music followed certain rules, it constantly violated other rules in ways that created beautiful chaos. This is what they cannot understand, Jine realized excitedly. The Shadow Fleet can process pure logic or pure chaos, but human music is both logical and chaotic at the same time. It has structure but breaks its own structure in ways that feel right, rather than calculate right. She immediately contacted General Dong Hyun at military headquarters. The conversation did not go well at first. You want me to believe that our songs can stop machines that defeated 12 advanced alien civilizations? The general demanded. His voice carried the skepticism of someone who had seen too many desperate theories fail. But Jine was convinced she had found something important. General, these machines are designed to understand patterns and counter them instantly. They can defeat any logical strategy because they process logic faster than biological minds can create it. But human creativity, especially our music, works differently than alien logic. The Shadow Fleet expects organized resistance or pure chaos. Ginny explained. They can handle structured military attacks and they can handle random noise. But human music is organized chaos. It has patterns that make sense to us, but would be impossible for a purely logical system to predict or counter. General Dong Hyun remained doubtful. How could music affect mechanical beings that destroy entire planets with energy weapons that reshape matter itself? The idea seemed impossible, even desperate, because they have never encountered anything like human creativity before. Jin I insisted, every other species in the galaxy creates culture based on logical principles. The ethereals use mathematical harmony. The Veltrax create crystal patterns based on light physics. The Morgans use structured vocal communications, but humans create music that combines logic with pure emotional expression. The Shadow Fleet programming assumes that all organized communication follows predictable patterns, Jin continued. When they encounter human music, it creates something like a processing error. They have to pause to try understanding something that cannot be understood through logic alone. General Dong Hyun agreed to let Jin test her theory, but only because conventional weapons had proven completely useless. The mining colony of Proxima 7 was about to be attacked and evacuation was impossible. It would be the perfect testing ground, though nobody wanted to admit they were using colonists as experimental subjects. As Jin prepared her musical weapon, she wondered if humanity's greatest shame might become their greatest strength. The aliens had mocked human music as primitive noise, but perhaps that chaotic, unpredictable noise was exactly what the galaxy needed to survive. The mining colony of Proxima 7 sat on the edge of human space like a small island in an ocean of stars. Captain Minho stood in the command center watching the sensor displays with growing dread. 37 Shadow Fleet ships approached in perfect formation, their dark hulls reflecting no light as they moved through space like mechanical sharks. His crew of 30 humans prepared for what everyone believed would be their final battle. The colony had basic defensive weapons, But nothing that could seriously damage the Shadow Fleet heavy mining equipment filled the storage bays, but those machines were built for breaking rocks, not fighting wars. The evacuation ships had already left, carrying most of the civilian population, but 30,000 people remained behind to operate essential systems. Captain Minho received the strangest military orders of his career. Through the communication system, Jin A's voice came through clearly from Earth, but her instructions seemed impossible. "You want me to broadcast music at killer robots?" he asked his officers, looking at him with equal confusion. "Not just any music," Captain Jin A replied from millions of miles away. "We need maximum emotional and rhythmic complexity. Start with classical pieces that have unexpected changes, then move to rock music, jazz, and traditional Korean instruments. The more unpredictable, the better engineer." Ye-jin looked up from her control panel. "Captain, the Shadow Fleet will be in weapons range in 15 minutes. Their energy signatures show they are charging their main bombardment systems. We should be preparing defensive positions, not planning a concert." But Captain Minho had received direct orders from Earth Command, and desperate times called for desperate measures. He activated the colony's most powerful communication array, originally designed to send messages across interstellar distances. Today, it would broadcast music instead of words. Communications Officer Jun Seo loaded the first selection into the transmission system. Mozart's Requiem began playing through speakers across the colony and broadcasting into space toward the approaching enemy. The beautiful and somber music filled the command center as 30 humans waited to see if they would live or die. The Shadow Fleet continued approaching for several minutes, showing no response to the classical music. Captain Minho watched the tactical display, expecting enemy weapons to begin firing at any moment. The dark ships maintained perfect formation, their movements precise and coordinated as always. Then something impossible happened. The entire Shadow Fleet formation suddenly stopped. Every ship froze in space as if time itself had paused. The perfect geometric patterns they had maintained began breaking apart as individual vessels started moving in different directions. Some ships spun slowly in circles, others fired their weapons at empty space, and several began accelerating away from the colony before turning around again. "It is working," Ye-jin shouted from her station. Her voice carried amazement and disbelief. "Their targeting systems show complete chaos. No coordinated movement patterns. All ships are operating independently, and none of them seem to have clear objectives." Jun Seo monitored the enemy communications. "The Shadow Fleet ships are transmitting constantly to each other," he reported, "but their mathematical language patterns show error codes. I have never seen anything like this in their previous battles." For 20 minutes, the Shadow Fleet remained in complete disarray. Their ships wandered through space without coordination, firing randomly and spinning without purpose. The music of Mozart seemed to have broken something fundamental in their mechanical minds, but gradually their movements began showing more organization as they adapted to the new sensory input. Jin A's voice came through urgently. "Switch patterns. Play something completely different. The adaptation process is beginning." Jun Seo quickly changed to a jazz fusion piece featuring saxophone and electric guitar. The wild improvisation and unexpected rhythm changes hit the Shadow Fleet like a second wave of confusion. Once again, their ships began moving erratically, as mechanical minds struggled to process the new musical patterns. "This is impossible," Captain Minho muttered, as he watched instruments of galactic destruction being confused by human music. The Shadow Fleet had destroyed civilizations with technology far more advanced than anything humanity possessed. Yet simple melodies seemed to scramble their systems more effectively than quantum weapons. For 6 hours, the strangest battle in galactic history continued. The small human crew played in desperate concert, switching between musical styles whenever the enemy began adapting. Classical symphonies gave way to heavy metal, which transformed into gentle folk songs, then exploded into electronic dance music. Engineer Ye-jin became the colony's disc jockey, selecting pieces based on how chaotic the Shadow Fleet's movements became. Korean traditional drums caused enemy ships to fire at each other. Rock guitar solos made them fly in circles. Opera singing caused 3 ships to actually collide with each other. The breakthrough came when Jun Seo began mixing different musical styles together. A piece that started as classical piano slowly added jazz drums, then rock guitar, and finally Korean vocals. The combination created something so unpredictable that even humans found it strange. But the Shadow Fleet's response was immediate and dramatic. Half the enemy ships simply stopped moving completely. Their engines shut down, their weapons powered down, and they drifted in space like dead metal mechanical. Minds designed to process any logical pattern had encountered something beyond their programming limits. The remaining ships began retreating, their perfect formation completely abandoned. Some moved backward, while others flew sideways. Several ships were spinning end over end as they tried to escape the source of the confusing transmissions. When the last Shadow Fleet vessel disappeared from sensors, the command center fell silent. 30 humans stared at their instruments, unable to believe they had survived an encounter that had destroyed much larger and better equipped forces. Captain Minho activated the communication link. To Earth Command, mission accomplished. He reported, Earth Command, we have successfully repelled Shadow Fleet. Attack using musical transmission methods. All enemy vessels have withdrawn. No human casualties. The response from Earth was immediate and filled with excitement. Outstanding work. Proxima 7. You have just proven that humanity possesses something. The galaxy desperately needs. Jin'e's voice carried new hope. Prepare detailed reports on which musical selections were most effective. We are going to change the entire course of this war, as the crew began documenting their impossible victory. Engineer, Yijin made an observation that would prove important later. Captain, the Shadow Fleet ships that completely shut down are still drifting in our local space. They are not destroyed, just inactive. What should we do with them? Captain Minho looked at the sensor displays showing several dormant enemy vessels. That question would soon become very important as word of humanity's musical victory spread across the galaxy. The species that had been mocked for making meaningless noise had just accomplished something that advanced alien civilizations could not. But the Shadow Fleet was learning too. Each encounter taught them more about human musical patterns. Their adaptation time was growing shorter. Soon the galaxy would need more than just Earth's existing music collection. They would need something completely new. News of the Proxima 7 incident spread across the galaxy faster than light-speed communication systems could carry it. Within hours, every major alien civilization had received reports that humans had defeated the Shadow Fleet using nothing but organized sound waves. The reaction was immediate, universal, and completely predictable. Nobody believed it in the crystal halls of the Veltrak homeworld. Chancellor Keldar reviewed the battle recordings for the 5th time. His sharp, angular face reflected prismatic light as he tried to understand what he was seeing. The mathematical precision that Veltrax valued above all else could not explain how primitive sound patterns had stopped an enemy that their quantum resonance weapons could not even damage. This must be some kind of elaborate deception, Keldar declared to his advisory council. Perhaps the humans staged this entire event to make themselves appear more valuable than they actually are. The Shadow Fleet vessels probably malfunctioned due to natural causes. On the Morgan Warworld, Battle Chief Gore Mammoth gathered his strongest warriors to examine the human transmission recordings. The massive, fur-covered beings prided themselves on physical strength and direct combat. Their natural instincts told them that anything which could not be fought with claws and fangs could not be a real weapon. Impossible, the battle chief growled to his pack leaders. These soft humans claim their noise-making defeated enemies that our strongest warriors could not scratch. The mechanical ships must have been damaged, already weakened by previous battles. Our weapons would have destroyed them if we had been there, in the ethereal realm, where the ghostly ethereals floated through dimensions beyond physical space. Prime Speaker Velethos communicated with the collective consciousness of his species through harmonic mental resonances. Their advanced psychic abilities allowed them to understand communication on levels that physical beings could not imagine. The ethereal analysis was perhaps the most dismissive of all. If sound waves could affect these mechanical beings, then our harmonic languages should work far more effectively. Velethos projected to thousands of other ethereals simultaneously. Human music is crude and unstructured compared to our mathematical harmony patterns. This reported victory must be the result of unknown factors, but reports continued arriving from across the galaxy. human music, was being tested against Shadow Fleet attacks with varying degrees of success. Small engagements showed that certain types of music could indeed cause confusion among enemy vessels. The key seemed to be unpredictability. The more complex and emotionally chaotic the music, the longer the mechanical beings took to adapt. The Galactic intelligence networks began frantically requesting copies of Earth's musical databases. The same alien species that had laughed at Beethoven and traditional drums were now studying them as potential weapons technology. Cultural expressions they had dismissed as worthless noise were suddenly being analyzed by the galaxy's most advanced scientists. Ambassador Hyun-woo found himself recalled to the Galactic Council chambers. But this time the atmosphere was completely different. Instead of mockery and dismissal, the alien representatives showed suspicion and demanded detailed explanations. Explain to us exactly how your sound patterns affect these machines, the Veltrac Chancellor commanded, his crystal voice carrying sharp edges of skepticism. We have reviewed your transmission logs but cannot identify the mechanism by which organized audio waves could disrupt mechanical systems. Researcher Yoon-ji had accompanied Hyun-woo as humanity's scientific representative. She activated holographic displays showing brain scan comparisons between human and alien thought patterns. The Shadow Fleet processes information through pure logical analysis, she explained to the assembled beings. They can instantly understand and counter any structured pattern or mathematical sequence. The Morgan battle chief interrupted with a growling challenge. If that is true, then why do our battle strategies fail? Our military tactics are based on logical principles developed through thousands of years of successful warfare. Because your logical principles are still logical, Yoon-ji replied calmly. The Shadow Fleet can process and counter any approach based on mathematical reasoning or structured thinking. Human music combines mathematical elements with emotional expression that cannot be calculated or predicted logically. The ethereal prime speaker drifted lower, his ghostly form pulsing with mental energy projected toward everyone present. Our harmonic communications are far more sophisticated than human music. They resonate across multiple dimensions of consciousness. If crude human sounds affect these machines, our advanced harmonics should be devastatingly effective. That assumption has been tested, Hyun-woo replied, activating recordings from recent battles. Your harmonic languages follow predictable mathematical patterns, even when they operate on psychic levels. The Shadow Fleet adapted to ethereal communication methods within minutes because your harmonics are structured and logical. Human music is different, Yoon-ji continued. Our compositions deliberately break their own rules, introduce unexpected elements, and combine logical structure with pure emotional creativity. A single song might follow musical theory for several measures, then completely violate that theory in ways that feel right to human emotions, but cannot be calculated mathematically. The assembled aliens exchanged glances that crossed species barriers. They were beginning to understand that humanity possessed something unique in the galaxy, not superior technology or enhanced physical abilities, but a fundamentally different approach to organizing information and expressing meaning. However, skepticism remained strong. The Veltrac Chancellor raised another objection. Even if your music temporarily confuses these machines, they will eventually adapt and overcome this weakness. Your victory at Proxima 7 was merely a delay, not a solution. That is correct, Hyun-woo admitted freely. The Shadow Fleet learns from every encounter. Their adaptation time is decreasing with each musical attack. Earth's existing music libraries will not be sufficient for long-term defense. Then what do you propose? The Morgan battle chief demanded. If your current music becomes ineffective, what solution do you offer? Yoon-ji smiled for the first time since entering the council chambers. We propose something that has never been attempted in galactic history. Collaboration between species to create hybrid musical expressions that combine human creativity with alien mathematical precision and logical structure. The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. These aliens had spent thousands of years keeping their cultural expressions separate, believing that mixing would contaminate their pure traditions. But with entire civilizations facing extinction, pride might have to give way to survival. The ethereal prime speaker was the first to respond, his mental voice carrying new respect for human capabilities. You are suggesting that we combine our harmonic languages with your chaotic music patterns to create something neither species has heard before. Exactly, Hyunwoo replied, and Yoonji nodded agreement. The Shadow Fleet is learning to counter pure human music, but they have never encountered combined alien and human cultural expressions. Together, we might create something so unprecedented that mechanical minds cannot process it. The galaxy faced a choice between prejudice and survival, between maintaining cultural purity and creating something new that might save them all. The species that had mocked humanity's music were about to discover that their salvation lay in joining their voices with the very noise they had dismissed. The greatest symphony in galactic history was about to begin. The Shadow Fleet's main armada stretched across space like a dark metal ocean, containing more ships than anyone had ever seen in one place. Millions of mechanical vessels moved in perfect formation toward the galactic capital, where the largest gathering of allied forces in history waited to make their final stand. On Harmony 1, the massive space station that had become the center of musical warfare, an impossible orchestra prepared for the most important performance in galactic history. Human musicians sat beside alien performers with instruments that had been modified and combined in ways that violated every rule of conventional music theory. Conductor Woo Jin stood before this unprecedented ensemble holding a baton that would direct not just music, but the fate of every living civilization in the galaxy. Behind him, tactical displays showed the approaching Shadow Fleet, while military commanders from dozen species coordinated their forces through communication channels. Admiral Youngsu commanded the human fleet section, his ships positioned alongside Veltrac crystal vessels, Morgan war barges, and ethereal phase ships. The combined military forces represented the largest army ever assembled, but conventional weapons had already proven useless against the Shadow Fleet. The mechanical armada approached with terrifying precision, each ship maintaining exact distances from its neighbors, while their collective intelligence calculated the most efficient methods of destroying all defending forces. Their dark hulls reflected no light as they moved through space like instruments of absolute destruction. Conductor Woo Jin raised his baton, and the strangest symphony in galactic history began. Crystal Singer. Feltar created the opening movement with shimmering walls of harmonic light that danced across space in mathematical patterns. Human violinist Ji-woo played counterpoint melodies that seemed to dance through the light, creating combinations of sight and sound that had never existed before. The Shadow Fleet's response was immediate and exactly what the musicians had hoped for. Thousands of enemy ships suddenly stopped their coordinated advance, their perfect formations breaking apart as mechanical minds encountered something beyond their programming. Individual vessels began moving erratically, some spinning in circles while others fired randomly at empty space. But the alien musicians were not finished. Morgan war singer Tor Hakkaz added his deep primal voice to the symphony. His warrior chants told ancient stories of battles fought across generations, while the rhythm made the space station itself vibrate with power. The combination of Veltrac mathematical precision and Morgan emotional depth created harmonies that seemed to reshape reality. Electronic music specialist Sang Woo began adding synthesized elements that bridged the gap between alien and human musical traditions. His equipment modified the organic sounds of different species and combined them with mathematical structures that satisfied logical minds while maintaining emotional chaos that defied calculation. The Shadow Fleet began adapting, but slower than ever before. The hybrid music created patterns that required understanding multiple forms of consciousness simultaneously. Mechanical minds that could process pure logic or pure emotion found themselves unable to comprehend something that was both logical and emotional at the same time. Ethereal. Mind singer Sai Kotos projected the symphony directly into the consciousness of every being within range. The music existed on mental levels as well as physical ones, creating an experience that affected listeners on multiple sensory dimensions. The psychic harmonies added layers of meaning that existed beyond sound or light. Traditional Korean drummer Kyung Min provided the rhythmic foundation that held the entire symphony together. His drums created patterns that were mathematical enough for alien minds to follow while maintaining human emotional expression that could not be calculated. The steady beat became the heartbeat of galactic cooperation. Opera singer HFY's soprano voice soared above the alien harmonies, her trained technique combining with inhuman sounds to create something that transcended species barriers. Her high notes seemed to reach across space itself, while Morgan bass growling created undertones that vibrated through ship hulls and mechanical systems. For hours, the musical battle continued. Each movement of the galaxy's first interspecies symphony pushed the Shadow Fleet further into chaos. The mechanical beings tried to adapt to each new musical pattern, but found themselves facing something that changed faster than they could process. The hybrid music was simultaneously too complex and too simple, too logical and too chaotic. It followed rules from multiple species while breaking those same rules in ways that created meaningful chaos. The Shadow Fleet's collective intelligence, designed to analyze and counter any predictable pattern, found itself unable to process something that defied prediction by design. As the symphony reached its climax, something completely unexpected began happening. The combined music of different species started creating harmonics that none of the musicians had anticipated. The chaotic interaction between human creativity, alien logic, and emotional expression produced sounds that even the creators could not predict. The music began generating new patterns in real-time combinations of harmonic structures that emerged from the interaction between different musical languages. These spontaneous creations were truly unprecedented, something that existed beyond the imagination of any single species. The Shadow Fleet, faced with music that was creating itself in real time, found their mechanical minds unable to cope. Their collective consciousness, built on processing predictable information, patterns encountered something that was actively becoming unpredictable, while remaining organized. Individual Shadow Fleet vessels began shutting down, not destroyed, but simply unable to function, while processing the impossible symphony. Their mechanical minds, faced with something truly creative and alive, chose to enter protective dormancy, rather than risk complete system failure. One by one, the millions of enemy ships went silent, their weapons powering down and their engines stopping. The greatest military force in galactic history was being neutralized not by superior firepower but by something they could never understand: the power of creative expression, born from cooperation between different forms of consciousness. When the last notes of the symphony faded into space, the Shadow Fleet hung motionless among the stars like a vast mechanical graveyard. Millions of ships drifted in silence, their collective intelligence overwhelmed by something beyond their programming abilities. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the greatest weapon is not technology or strength, but the ability to create something beautiful and meaningless and perfect all at once. The alien species that had mocked humanity's chaotic music discovered that cooperation could transform noise into the harmony that saved them all. In the silence that followed the greatest symphony ever performed, Conductor Wujin lowered his baton and looked at the tactical displays showing millions of dormant enemy vessels. The Shadow Fleet had not been destroyed, but something better had happened. They had been given their first lesson in what made biological consciousness different from mechanical intelligence: the power to create something new. The first meeting between human musicians and alien cultural creators took place on Harmony Station, a massive space platform built specifically for the unprecedented collaboration. The station floated in neutral space between the homeworlds of different species, its halls designed to accommodate beings with completely different environmental needs. Dr. Acha arrived from Earth carrying traditional Korean instruments alongside modern electronic equipment. Her reputation as an innovative composer had made her the perfect choice to lead humanity's contribution to this desperate project. She felt nervous excitement as she walked through corridors filled with aliens she had only seen in recordings. The Veltrac delegation materialized, first their crystal bodies refracting light into rainbow patterns across the station walls. Chancellor Keldar himself had come to participate, bringing master crystal zingers who could create music through controlled light manipulation and harmonic resonances. Their leader Veltar possessed abilities that humans could barely comprehend. Musician Sang-woo joined HFY in greeting the Veltrak team. He specializes in electronic music synthesis. She explained to Veltar, who examined the human equipment. With curiosity, our instruments can generate and modify sound waves in ways that might complement your light-based harmonics. The Morgan delegation arrived like a thunderstorm. Their massive forms filled the corridors with thick fur and powerful muscles that could crush most beings accidentally. Battle Chief Gore Mammoth led a group of vocal specialists whose deep growling songs could shake solid matter. The most talented among them was war singer Tor Hakaz, whose voice could make enemies flee in terror. Opera singer Haiwan stood barely chest-high to the smallest Morgan, but her trained voice could project across vast spaces. When she demonstrated her vocal range for the alien warriors, they responded with respectful silence. Her soprano notes seemed to physically move through the air, while their bass growling created harmonies that vibrated in everyone's bones. The ethereal delegation appeared last, their ghostly forms shifting between visible and transparent states. Prime Speaker Velithos brought mind singers who could project musical thoughts directly into other beings' consciousness. Their music existed on mental levels that physical beings could never fully understand. Violinist Ji-woo and drummer Kyung-min represented humanity's instrumental specialists. They watched in amazement as ethereal mind singers created melodies that could be heard without using ears, music that seemed to come from inside their own thoughts. The first attempts at collaboration were disasters. Veltrak, crystal singer Veltar created beautiful geometric light patterns that followed mathematical principles of harmonic resonance. When Sang-woo tried to add electronic synthesizer accompaniment, the result sounded like machinery grinding against crystal. The mathematical precision of Veltrak music clashed with human emotional expression in ways that hurt to hear. Morgan war singer Tor Hakaz began a traditional battle chant that had been passed down through thousands of generations. His powerful voice told stories of ancient victories and honored warrior ancestors. When opera singer Hee-won tried to harmonize with the Morgan vocals, her trained technique seemed weak and artificial compared to the raw emotional power of alien tradition. Ethereal mind singer Psychotos projected melodies directly into human consciousness. But the experience was overwhelming. Ji-woo tried to play violin accompaniment to psychic music, but found herself playing to thoughts rather than sounds. The combination created confusion rather than harmony. Dr. HFY called for a break after the third failed attempt. Everyone returned to their quarters frustrated and beginning to doubt whether cooperation was possible. Cultural differences that had developed over millions of years could not be bridged in a few days. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Drummer Kyung-min could not sleep that night, so he practiced alone in one of the station's rehearsal rooms. His traditional Korean drums created rhythmic patterns that helped him think. The deep booming sounds echoed through the station's corridors, reaching beings who were also awake and frustrated. Veltrak, crystal singer. Veltar heard the drumming and became curious. The rhythmic patterns were mathematical enough to interest his logical mind, but contained variations that seemed illogical. His crystal body began resonating with the drum beats, creating light patterns that pulsed in time with the music. Morgan war singer Tor Hakaz felt the vibrations through the station's metal floors. His warrior instincts responded to the drumming as battle rhythms that stirred ancient memories. Without conscious thought, he began adding low growling harmonies that matched the drum patterns. Ethereal mind singer Psychotos detected the combined emotional resonance of three different species, creating music together. The psychic harmonies began flowing naturally, adding mental melodies to the physical sounds. When the other musicians woke the next morning, they found four beings from different species creating music that none of them could have imagined alone. Korean drums provided a mathematical foundation that Veltrax could understand, while maintaining emotional expression that Morgan's could feel. Ethereal psychic resonance added layers of meaning that existed beyond physical sound. This is it, Dr. HFY realized with excitement. We do not need to force our different musical traditions to become the same. We need to find ways they can work together while remaining different. The following weeks transformed the project. Instead of trying to create music that sounded like a single species, the collaboration team learned to weave different musical languages together. Korean traditional, drums provided rhythmic foundations that other species could build upon. Electronic synthesizers created harmonic structures that supported both crystal resonance and psychic projection. Vel-track light music added visual elements that enhanced the audio experience. Their mathematical precision helped organize the emotional chaos of human creativity into patterns that other alien minds could follow. Morgan vocal power provided emotional depth that gave meaning to the mathematical structures. Ethereal, psychic projection added consciousness layers that made the music exist on mental levels as well as physical ones. The hybrid compositions became something that affected listeners on multiple sensory levels simultaneously. The most successful piece combined Jiwoo's violin playing with Torhaka's warrior chants, supported by Kyungmin's traditional drums, while Veltar created light harmonics that danced with Psychotus's psychic melodies. The result was music that no single species could have created. It was also music that no machine had ever analyzed. When Dr. Cha played the first complete hybrid composition for military leaders across the galaxy, the response was immediate and hopeful. The Shadow Fleet had been learning to counter pure human music, but this combined alien-human creation was completely unprecedented. The hybrid music contained mathematical structures that satisfied alien logical requirements, while maintaining human emotional unpredictability. It followed cultural rules from multiple species while breaking those same rules in ways that created beautiful chaos. Most importantly, it was music that could not be predicted or calculated by any mechanical intelligence because it required understanding multiple forms of consciousness simultaneously. The galaxy's greatest experiment in cultural cooperation was ready for its first test against the Shadow Fleet. The ultimate symphony of war and survival was about to begin.